In a world where the pursuit of happiness often becomes a maze of illusions and hollow promises, The Paths of Happiness by James Allen shines as a timeless beacon of guidance. Picture a path lit by the wisdom of an ancient philosopher, where Allen's words hum like melodies on the breeze, inviting the soul to delve deeply into truths that nourish the spirit. Through these pages, Allen leads us on a journey that redefines happiness, not as wealth or recognition, but as a state of purity in the heart and clarity in the mind. Here, happiness is not an external achievement, but an internal art, a spark kindled as we release ourselves from the chains of selfishness and desire. With the poetic grace of a storyteller and the insight of a sage, Allen maps a spiritual course that guides us toward authenticity and inner peace. As we traverse his paths, we find that happiness is a process of self-discovery, where each step is an invitation to embrace goodness, compassion, and unconditional love. Every lesson and reflection in these pages calls us to explore the essence of our humanity, illuminating the way to a rich and meaningful life. Prepare to dive into a profound sea of thought, where Allen's voice resounds with timeless wisdom. In The Paths of Happiness, the search for well-being transforms into a sublime art, and each page serves as a stepping stone toward our own hidden garden of happiness. Welcome to a journey that promises not only to shift your perspective, but to lead you to the boundless source of joy that resides within. Preface. I looked around and saw that the world was darkened by pain and embraced by the fierce fire of suffering. I sought the cause, but no matter where I looked, I could not find it. I looked in books and could not find it there either. However, when I looked within myself, I found both the cause and the self-taught nature of that cause. So I sought again, deeper this time, and thus I found the remedy. I discovered a law, the law of love, a life. The life in accordance with this law, a truth, the truth of a conquered mind and a calm, obedient heart. I dreamed of writing a book that would help men and women, rich or poor, educated or unlearned, to find within themselves the source of all success, all achievement, and all truth. This dream, which stayed with me, eventually became something substantial, and now I send it out into the world on its mission of healing and blessing, knowing that it can only reach the homes and hearts of those who are waiting and ready to receive it. James Allen. Discontent, pain, and sorrow are the shadows of life. There is no heart in the world that has not felt the sting of pain, no mind that has not been shaken in the dark waters of trouble. There is also no eye that has not shed the hot, scythe-like tears of unspeakable anguish. There is no home where the great destroyers, illness and death, have not entered, severing heart from heart and casting over all the dark mantle of sadness. In the strong and seemingly indestructible meshes of evil, all are more or less trapped. And pain, misfortune, and unhappiness await humanity, aiming to escape or mitigate in some way this darkness that overshadows them. Men and women rush blindly into countless ruses, taking paths by which they hope to affectionately enter a happiness that will not pass. Thus it is with the drunkard and the prostitute who indulge in sensual excitements. Thus it is with the outcast who shuns the troubles of the world and surrounds themselves with irritating luxuries. Thus it is with the one who thirsts for wealth or fame and subordinates all things to the attainment of that goal. Thus it is with those who seek comfort in the fulfillment of religious rites. To all these, the sought-after bliss seems to arrive, and the soul for a time drowses in a sweet security and in an intoxicating forgetfulness of the existence of evil. But ultimately the day of illness or great sorrow, of temptation or misfortune, suddenly arrives in the unfortified soul, and the fabric of their fanciful happiness tears apart. Thus, above all personal joy looms the sharp blade of misfortune, ready at any moment to fall and crush the soul of the one unprotected by knowledge. The child cries to become a man or woman, while the man and woman sigh for the lost happiness of childhood. The poor feel the weight of the chains of poverty to which they are bound, and the rich often live in fear of poverty or wander the world in search of an elusive shadow they call happiness. Sometimes, the soul feels that it has found a certain peace and happiness by adopting a particular religion, embracing an intellectual philosophy, or constructing an intellectual or artistic ideal. But every overwhelming temptation demonstrates that religion is inadequate or insufficient. Likewise, theoretical philosophy proves to be an unnecessary crutch. At some point, the idealistic statue that the devotee has worked on for years shatters into pieces at their feet. There is then no way to escape pain and sorrow. There is no way to break the bonds of evil. Permanent bliss, assured prosperity, and enduring peace, an insane dream. There is no path, and I say this with joy, by which evil can be slain forever. There is a process by which illness, poverty, or any unfavorable condition or circumstance can be set aside, never to return. There is a method by which permanent prosperity can be assured, free from any fear of the return of adversity, and there is a practice by which uninterrupted and endless peace and happiness can be participated in and realized. The beginning of the path that leads to this glorious realization is the acquisition of a correct understanding of the nature of evil. It is not enough to deny or ignore evil, it must be understood. It is not enough to pray to God to eliminate evil. We must discover why it is there and the lesson it has for us. It serves no purpose to worry and complain about the chains that bind you. You must know why and how you are chained. Therefore, listen, you must step outside of yourself and begin to examine and understand yourself. You must cease to be a disobedient child in the school of experience and begin to learn with humility and patience the lessons that are established for your edification and ultimate perfection. For evil, when properly understood, is not an unlimited power or principle in the universe, but a passing phase of human experience, and thus becomes a teacher for those who are ready to learn. Evil is not an abstract thing outside of you. It is an experience in your own heart. And only by patiently examining and rectifying your heart will you gradually be led to the discovery of the origin and nature of evil, which will necessarily be followed by its complete eradication. All evil is corrective and reparative. It is therefore not permanent. It has its roots in ignorance of the true nature and relationship of things. Thus, as long as we remain in this state of ignorance, we will remain subject to evil. There is no evil in the universe that is not the result of ignorance, and that would not lead us, if we were willing and ready to learn, to a higher wisdom that would then fade away. But men remain in evil, and it does not disappear because men are not willing or ready to learn the choice that comes to teach them. I knew a child who, every night when his mother took him to bed, cried to play with the candle. And one night, when the mother was distracted for a moment, the child seized the candle. The result was inevitable, and the child never wanted to play with it again. Through his senseless act, he learned and perfectly grasped the lesson of obedience and came to know that fire burns. This incident is a complete illustration of the nature, meaning, and final result of all sin and malice, just as the child suffered from his own ignorance of the true nature of fire. Older children suffer from their ignorance of the true nature of things, which drives them to cry and struggle, and their night, when what they desire ultimately becomes harmful to them. The only difference is that in the latter case, the ignorance and evil were more deeply rooted and darker. Evil has always been symbolized by darkness and good by light, and in the symbol lies the perfect interpretation of reality. For just as light always floods the universe and darkness is merely a small spot or shadow cast by a small body that intercepts a few rays of the unlimited light, so the light of supreme good is the positive and life-giving power that floods the universe, while evil is the insignificant shadow cast by the jockey who intercepts and closes off the enlightening rays that strive to enter when night envelops the world in its black and impenetrable cloak. No matter the density of the darkness, it only covers a small space of our little planet, for the whole universe is a sea of bright light, and every soul knows that it will awaken in the light at dawn. Know, therefore, that when the dark night of grief, pain, or misfortune settles in your souls, and you move forward with weary and uncertain steps, you are merely placing your own personal desires between yourself and the limitless light of joy and happiness, and that the dark shadow that covers you is not cast by you, for only you can do so. Thus, just as the outer darkness is but a negative shadow, an unreality that comes from nowhere, goes nowhere, and has no refuge, so too is inner darkness a negative shadow that passes over the evolving soul born of light. I suppose you have heard someone say, "But why go through the darkness of evil?" Because through ignorance you chose to do so, and because in doing so you can understand both good and evil. Thus you will be able to better appreciate the light after having traversed the darkness, just as evil is the direct result of ignorance. When the lessons of evil are completely learned, ignorance disappears and wisdom takes its place. But just as a disobedient child refuses to learn his lessons at school, it is possible to refuse to learn the lessons of experience and remain in darkness, continually suffering from recurring punishments in the form of illness, disappointment, and sorrow. Therefore, one who wishes to free themselves from the evil that surrounds them must be ready and willing to learn, and they must be prepared to submit to this disciplinary process, without which no ounce of lasting wisdom, happiness, and peace can be assured. A man can confine himself to a dark room and deny that light exists. But since it is everywhere, darkness exists only in his own room. You can therefore extinguish the light of truth, or you can begin to break down the walls of prejudice by searching within yourself for the error you have built around you, and let the glorious and omnipresent light in through serious self-examination. Strive to understand, and not merely to assert in theory, that evil is a passing phase, a shadow created by yourself, and that all your pains, sorrows, and misfortunes have come to you through a process of law without deviations and absolutely perfect. They have come to you because you deserve and request them, and by first enduring them and then understanding them, you can become stronger, wiser, and nobler. When you have fully entered into this realization, you will be able to shape your own circumstances, transmute all evil into good, and weave, with your expert hand, the fabric of your destiny. What do you say about the night? Do you still see the resplendent dawn atop the mountains? El Dorado is high, with the light of lights, its beautiful feet at the top of the hills. Do they still come to chase away the darkness and with it all the demons of the night, striking your sight with their rays? Hear their voice, the sound of the perdition of error. The morning comes, friend of light. Even now, the golden dawn, the mountain crest, I faintly see the path on which now its shining feet are set toward the night. The darkness will pass, and all things that love darkness and hate light will disappear forever with the night. Rejoice, therefore, for thus sings the swift herald. The world is a reflection of mental states. The world is according to what you are. Everything in the universe becomes your own inner experience. It does not matter what is outside, for all is a reflection of your own state of consciousness. Everything you are inside is important, for everything outside will reflect and color itself accordingly. Everything you positively know is contained in your own experience. Everything you will one day know must pass through the door of experience, and thus become part of yourself. Your own thoughts, desires, and aspirations shape your world. For you, everything that exists in the universe of beauty, joy, and happiness, or ugliness, sadness, and pain is contained within yourself. Through your own thoughts you make or ruin your life, your world, your universe. As you build inside by the power of thought, so will your outer life and the circumstances that shape themselves accordingly. What you harbor in the innermost chambers of your heart, sooner or later, through the inevitable law of reaction, will manifest in your outer life. The impure, sordid, and selfish soul gravitates with unfailing precision toward misfortune and catastrophe. But the pure, unselfish, and noble soul gravitates with the same precision toward happiness. Every soul attracts its own, and nothing can come to it that does not belong to it. To become aware of this is to recognize the universality of divine law. The incidents of every human life that shape and ruin it are attracted by the quality and power of its own inner life of thought. Each soul is a complex combination of gathered experiences and thoughts, and the body is merely an improvised vehicle for its manifestation. Therefore, what your thoughts are constitutes your true being, and the world around you, both animate and inanimate, takes on the aspect that your thoughts clothe it with. As Buddha said, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is based on our thoughts. It is made of our thoughts. It follows that if a man is happy, it is because he lives in happy thoughts. If he is miserable, it is because he dwells in dejected and weakening thoughts. Whether one is fearful or fearless, mad or wise, tormented or serene, the cause of his own state or states lies within the soul. It seems to me now that I hear a chorus of voices exclaiming, "Do you really mean that external circumstances do not affect our minds?" I do not say this, but I do say this, and I know it to be an infallible truth. Circumstances can only affect you to the extent that you allow them to. You allow yourself to be carried away by circumstances through a lack of understanding of the nature, use, and power of thought. Do you think then that this belief depends on all our pains and all our joys? That external things have the power to make or ruin life? In doing so, you submit to these external things. You admit that you are their slave and that they are your master. By acting this way, you confer upon them a power that they do not possess in themselves, and their effect is not due simply to circumstances, but to the sadness or joy, fear or hope, strength or weakness that your sphere of thought has projected around them. I have known two men who, at a young age, lost the savings they had accumulated over the years. One of them felt deeply troubled and was swept away by distress, worry, and discouragement. The other, upon reading in his morning newspaper that the bank where he had deposited his money had gone bankrupt and that he had lost everything, calmly and firmly commented, "Well, it's gone. Problems and concerns won't bring it back, but hard work will." He then set to work with renewed vigor and quickly became prosperous, while the first man, continuing to mourn the loss of his money and lamenting his bad luck, remained prey and tool to adverse circumstances, in reality to his own weak and servile thoughts. The loss of money was a curse for one because he clothed the event in dark and gloomy thoughts, but it was a blessing for the other because it projected thoughts of strength, hope, and renewed effort around him. If circumstances had the power to bless or harm, they would bless and harm all men in the same way. But the fact that the same circumstances can be both good and bad for different souls proves that good or evil is not in the circumstances, but in the mind of the one who perceives them. When you begin to become aware of this, you will begin to control your thoughts, to regulate and discipline your mind, and to rebuild the inner temple of your soul, eliminating everything that is unnecessary or superfluous, and integrating only thoughts of joy and serenity, strength and life, compassion and love, beauty and immortality within yourself. And as you do this, you will become joyful and serene, strong and healthy, compassionate and loving and beautiful with the beauty of immortality. Just as we clothe events in the fabric of our own thoughts, we also clothe the objects of the visible world around us. Where one sees harmony and beauty, another sees a repulsive horror. One day, an enthusiastic naturalist was walking along country paths in search of his passion, and during his strolls he encountered a brackish puddle near an enclosure. As he prepared to fill a small bottle with the water to examine it under the microscope, he exclaimed with more enthusiasm than discretion in front of an uneducated laborer's son nearby about the countless hidden wonders contained in the pond, concluding with, "Yes, my friend, in this pond are 100 or even 1,000,000 universes. Oh, if only we had the sense or the instrument to discover them." The unsophisticated laborer's son calmly commented, "I know the water is full of tadpoles, but they are easy to catch." Where the naturalist, with his mind filled with knowledge of natural facts, saw beauty, harmony, and hidden glory, the uneducated mind saw only an offensive mudhole. The wildflower that the casual walker crushes thoughtlessly is, for the spiritual eye of the poet, an angelic messenger of the invisible. For many, the ocean is merely a vast expanse of gloomy water where boats sail and sometimes sink. But for the soul of the musician, it is something alive that he hears in all its changing moods, divine harmonies. Where the ordinary mind sees disaster and confusion, the philosopher's mind sees the most perfect sequence of cause and effect. And where the materialist sees only endless death, the mystic sees pulsating and eternal life. Thus, just as we clothe events and objects with our own thoughts, we also clothe the souls of others with the garments of our thoughts. The suspicious person believes that everyone is suspicious. The liar feels secure in thinking that he is not foolish enough to believe that there exists a phenomenon such as a strictly honest person. The envious person sees envy in all souls. The miser thinks that everyone is eager to take his money. One who gives, subordinating his conscience to the making of his wealth, sleeps with a revolver under his pillow, wrapped in the illusion that the world is filled with conscienceless people ready to steal from him. And the abandoned sensualist views the saint as a hypocrite. On the other hand, those who dwell in loving thoughts see their love and sympathy evoked everywhere. The trusting and honest are not disturbed by suspicion. The benevolent and charitable, who rejoice in the good fortune of others, scarcely know what envy means. One who has realized the divine within himself is recognized by all beings. Even among beasts, men and women affirm their mental perspective by the fact that, according to the law of cause and effect, they attract to themselves what they send out. Thus they come into contact with like-minded people. The old proverb, "birds of a feather flock together," has a deeper meaning than is generally attributed to it. Indeed, in the world of thought, as in the world of matter, each clings to its kind. If you wish for kindness, be kind. If you seek truth, be sincere. What you give of yourself, you find. Your world is a reflection of you. If you are one of those who pray and hope for a happier world beyond the grave, here is a message of joy for you. You can enter and realize that happy world now. It fills the entire universe and is found within you, waiting for you to discover, recognize, and possess it. He who understood the internal laws of being said, "When men say here or there, do not follow them, for the kingdom of God is within you." Thus, what you must do is believe in it. Simply believe with a mind unclouded by doubt. Then meditate on it until you understand it. Only then will you begin to purify and build your inner world. And as you progress, moving from revelation to revelation, from realization to realization, you will discover the absolute impotence of external things compared to the magical power of a self-governed soul. If you want to set the world right and drive away all its evils and afflictions, make its wild places blossom and turn its dreary deserts into roses, then surpass yourself. If you want the world to cease being captive to sin, restore all broken hearts, kill pain and let in sweet comfort. Become yourself if you want to heal the world of its long illness, put an end to its sorrow and pain, bring healing joy, and give the afflicted rest. So heal yourself. If you want to awaken the world from its death-like sleep and dark struggle, bring it to love, peace, and the radiance of immortal life, then wake up. By rising above undesirable conditions, having seen and understood that evil is merely a passing shadow cast by the self-interceptor through the transcendent form of eternal good, and that the world is a mirror in which everyone sees a reflection of themselves, we now ascend by firm and easy steps to that plane of perception where the vision of law is seen and realized. And with this understanding comes the knowledge that everything is included in an incessant interaction of cause and effect, where nothing can be separated from the law, from the most trivial thought, word, or deed of man to the movements of celestial bodies. The law reigns supreme. No arbitrary condition can even exist for a moment, for such a condition would be a denial and annihilation of the law. Every condition of life is therefore linked in an ordered and harmonious sequence, and the secret and cause of each condition are contained within itself. The law, whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. This is inscribed in the flaming letters of the portal of eternity, and no one can deny it. No one can deceive the law. No one can escape it. He who puts his hand in the fire must suffer the burn until it is extinguished, and neither curses nor prayers can alter it. For it is precisely the same law that governs the realm of the spirit. Hatred, anger, jealousy, envy, lust, greed, these are all fires that burn, and whoever touches them must suffer the torments of burning. All these conditions of the mind are rightly called evils, for they are the soul's efforts to subvert, in its ignorance, the law, and therefore lead to chaos and inner confusion. And sooner or later, they manifest in external circumstances as diseases, failures, and misfortunes, accompanied by grief, pain, and despair. While love, gentleness, goodwill, and purity are refreshing airs that breathe peace upon the soul that suffers them, and being in harmony with the eternal law, they manifest as health, peaceful harmony, success, and good fortune, without deviations. A deep understanding of this great law that permeates the universe leads to the acquisition of that mental state known as obedience. Knowing that justice, harmony, and love are supreme in the universe also means recognizing that all adverse and painful conditions are the result of our own disobedience to this law. Such knowledge leads to strength and power, and upon this knowledge can be built a true life as well as lasting success and happiness. Be patient under all circumstances and accept all conditions as necessary factors in your training. It is to rise above all painful conditions and overcome them with an advance that is sure and leaves no fear of their return, for by the power of obedience to the law, they are completely annihilated. He who is obedient works in harmony with the law. In fact, he has identified with the law, and all that he conquers, he does so forever. Everything he builds can never be destroyed. The cause of all power as well as all weakness lies within. The secret of all happiness, as well as all misery, also lies within. There is no progress without inner development, and there is no safe foothold for prosperity or peace except through the orderly advancement of knowledge. For you who say you are chained by circumstances, you cry for better opportunities, for a wider range, for better physical conditions. Perhaps you inwardly curse the fate that binds you hand and foot, and it is for you that I write and speak. Listen and let my words take root in your heart, for what I tell you is true. You can attain that improved condition in your external life that you desire if you are unwaveringly committed to improving your inner life. I know that this path may seem barren at first, and the truth is that it always is. Only error and illusion are attractive and fascinating. But if you commit to walking it, if you discipline your thought with perseverance by eradicating your weaknesses and allowing your soul's strengths and spiritual powers to unfold, you will be amazed at the magical changes that will occur in your external life. As you advance, golden opportunities will spread across your path. The power and judgment necessary to use them correctly will arise within you. Wonderful friends will come to you without your seeking them. Sympathetic souls will be drawn to you like a needle to a magnet. And the books and all the external aids you need will come to you without your seeking them. Perhaps the chains of poverty weigh heavily on you, and you are friendless and alone. Perhaps you wish to lighten your load, but the burden continues, and you seem to be wrapped in growing darkness. Perhaps you complain of the whims of your luck, blaming your birth, your parents, your employer, or the unjust powers that have undeservedly granted you poverty and trials, while others have been given opulence and ease. Stop complaining, stop worrying. None of those things you blame is the cause of your poverty. The cause is within yourself, and where the cause is, there also lies the remedy. The very fact that you complain proves that you deserve your fate. It shows that you lack that faith, which is the foundation of all effort and progress. There is no place for a whiner in a universe of law, and worry is a suicide of the soul. By your own mental attitude, you strengthen the chains that bind you, and you attract around you the darkness in which you are confined. Change your perspective on life, and your external life will change. Strengthen yourself in faith and knowledge and make yourself worthy of a better environment and broader opportunities. Make sure first to get the best out of what you have. Do not delude yourself by assuming that you can take a step towards greater advantages while neglecting the smaller things. For if you could, the advantage would be occasional, and you would quickly fall back again to learn the lesson you had neglected. Just as a child in school must master one standard before moving on to the next, so before you can have that superior good you desire so much, you must faithfully use what you already possess. The parable of the talents is a beautiful story that illustrates this truth, as it clearly shows that if we misuse, neglect, or degrade what we have, even if it seems insignificant, even that little will not be taken away. For by our behavior we show that we are unworthy of it. Perhaps you live in a small country house and are surrounded by unhealthy and vicious influences. You desire a larger and more hygienic residence. Then you must adapt to that residence by first making your country home as much as possible a little paradise. Keep it impeccably clean. Make it as beautiful and pleasant as your limited means allow. Prepare your simple food with the greatest care and set a humble table with all the taste you can muster. If you cannot afford a carpet, let your rooms be covered with smiles and greetings, fastened with the nails of kind words, driven in with the hammer of patience. Such a carpet does not fade under the sun, and constant use will never wear it out. By ennobling your current environment in this way, you will rise above it and its need, and at the right moment, you will move to the better home and environment that have been waiting for you all this time and for which you are preparing to enter. Perhaps you wish for more time to think and strive, and you feel that your working hours are too hard and too long. Try to make the most of the little free time you have. It is useless to wish for more time if you are already wasting the little you have, for you will only become more lazy and indifferent. Even poverty and lack of time and leisure are not the evils you imagine if they prevent you from progressing. It is because you have clothed them in your own weaknesses, and the evil you see in them is actually in yourself. Strive to fully understand that to the extent that you shape and mold your mind, you are the creator of your destiny. And as you become increasingly aware of this through the transmuting power of self-discipline, you will begin to see that these so-called evils can turn into blessings. Then you will use your poverty to cultivate patience, hope, and courage, and your lack of time to gain promptness of action and decisiveness of mind. taking advantage of the precious moments as they present themselves for their acceptance. Just as the most beautiful flowers grow in the most ungrateful soil, in the dark soil of poverty have developed and flourished the most beautiful flowers of humanity. Where there are difficulties to overcome and unsatisfactory conditions to surpass, their virtue blooms most and manifests its glory. Perhaps you serve a tyrannical master and feel that he treats you harshly. Consider that this is also necessary for your training. Return the coldness of your employer with kindness and forgiveness. Practice patience and self-control tirelessly. Transform the disadvantage into something useful by using it to gain mental and spiritual strength. By your example and your silent influence, you will teach your employer. You will help him feel ashamed of his conduct, and at the same time you will rise to that level of spiritual realization that will enable you to enter new and more pleasant environments as soon as they present themselves. Do not complain about being a slave. Elevate yourself with noble conduct above the plane of slavery. Before complaining about being someone else's slave, make sure that you are not a slave to yourself. Look within yourself. Look deep and do not pity yourself. You may find enslaving thoughts and desires, and in your daily life and behaviors, enslaving habits. Conquer that. Cease to be a slave to your ego, and no man will have the power to enslave you. By overcoming the ego, you will overcome all adverse conditions, and all difficulties will bow before you. Do not complain about being oppressed by the rich. Be assured that if you became rich, you would not yourself be an oppressor. Remember that there is an eternal law that is absolutely just, and he who oppresses today must be oppressed tomorrow. There is no escape from this, and perhaps in a previous existence you were rich and an oppressor, and now you are merely paying your debt to the great law. Practice strength and faith. Remain constantly in the spirit of eternal justice and eternal good. Strive to rise above what is personal and transient towards what is impersonal and permanent. Rid yourself of the illusion of being hurt or oppressed by another, and try to realize, through a deeper understanding of your inner life and the laws that govern that life, that you are actually only hurt by what is within you. There is no practice more degrading, unpleasant, and destructive to the soul than self-pity. Cast it away from you. For as long as this cancer feeds on your heart, you can never hope to grow towards a fuller life. Cease to condemn others and begin to condemn yourself. Do not condemn any of your acts, desires, or thoughts that would not withstand comparison with immaculate purity or the light of sinless good. By doing so, you will build your house on the rock of the eternal, and all that is necessary for your happiness and well-being will come to you in due time. There is no way to rise permanently above poverty or any undesirable condition except by eradicating those selfish and negative conditions within yourself, which are their reflection and through which they continue. The path to true wealth is to enrich the soul through the acquisition of virtue. Outside of true heart virtue, there is neither prosperity nor power, only appearances. I am aware that men make money without having acquired any measure of virtue and have little desire to do so, but that money does not constitute true wealth, and its possession is transient and feverish. Here is the testimony of David. I was envious of the foolish when I saw the prosperity of the wicked, for there are no pangs in their death, but their strength is firm. They are not in trouble as other men, neither are they plagued like other men. Therefore pride compasses them about as a chain. Violence covers them as a garment. Their eyes stand out with fatness. They have more than heart could wish. Truly, I have cleansed my heart in vain and washed my hands in innocency. When I thought to know this, it was too painful for me, until I went into the sanctuary of God. Then I understood their end. The prosperity of the wicked was a great trial for David, until he entered into the sanctuary of God, and then knew their purpose. You too can enter this sanctuary. It is within you. It is that state of consciousness that remains when all that is sordid, personal, and impermanent rises above, and the universal and eternal principles are realized. It is the state of consciousness of God, the sanctuary of the Most High. When, through a long struggle and self-discipline, you have succeeded in entering through the gate of this holy temple, you will perceive with a clear vision the end and the fruit of all human thought and effort, both good and bad. Then you will no longer waver in your faith upon seeing that the immoral man amasses external wealth, for you will know that he must return to poverty and degradation. The rich man who is barren of virtue is, in reality, poor, and just as the waters of the river flow towards the ocean, he, amidst all his riches, flows toward poverty and misery. And although he dies rich, he will reap the bitter fruit of all his immorality. And although he becomes rich many times, he will still fall into poverty until, through a long experience and suffering, he conquers poverty. But the man who is outwardly poor and rich in virtues is truly rich, and amidst all his poverty, he is surely traveling toward an abundance of joy and happiness that awaits his arrival. For if you wish to become truly and sustainably prosperous, you must first be virtuous. Therefore, it is unwise to aim directly for prosperity and make it the sole object of life. It is better to aim for self-perfection, to make useful and selfless service the object of life, and to always extend the hands of faith towards the supreme and unchanging good. You say you desire wealth not for your own sake, but to do good with it and bless others. If this is your true motive for desiring wealth, then wealth will come to you, for you will be recognized as someone strong and selfless. Yes, amidst riches, you are ready to see yourself as a steward and not as an owner. But examine your motivations closely, for in most cases where one desires money for the stated purpose of blessing others, the underlying motive is often the love of popularity and the desire to pass oneself off as a philanthropist or reformer. If you do not do good with the little you have, you can be sure that the more money you have, the more selfish you will become. All the good you seem to do with your money, if any, will merely be a form of self-praise. If your true desire is to do good, there is no need to wait until you have money to do it. You can do it now, at this very moment, and just where you are. If you are truly as altruistic as you claim, you will prove it by sacrificing yourself for others. No matter how poor you are, there is room for personal sacrifice. After all, the widow gave all she had to the treasury. The heart that truly desires good does not wait for money to act, but approaches the altar of sacrifice and leaves behind the unworthy elements of the ego, then goes out and breathes upon others, the stranger, the friend, and the enemy alike. The breath of blessing, like the effect, is linked to the cause. Thus, prosperity and power are linked to inner good, while poverty and weakness are linked to inner evil. Money does not constitute true wealth, nor does position nor power. Relying solely on it is to be on a slippery slope. Your true wealth is your store of virtue, and your true power depends on how you use it. Rectify your heart, and you will rectify your life. Lust, hatred, anger, vanity, pride, greed, self-satisfaction, self-seeking, stubbornness, all these are poverty and weakness, while love, purity, kindness, gentleness, compassion, generosity, self-forgetfulness, and self-renunciation are all wealth and power. As you overcome the elements of poverty and weakness, an irresistible and omnipotent power evolves from within, and he who manages to establish himself in the highest virtue places the entire world at his feet. But the rich, just like the poor, have their undesirable conditions and are often further from happiness than the poor. Here, we see how happiness depends not on external aids or possessions, but on inner life. Perhaps you are an employer and have a multitude of problems. When you find good and faithful servants, they leave you quickly. As a result, you begin to lose or have completely lost your faith in human nature. You try to remedy things by offering better wages and allowing certain freedoms, but nothing improves. Allow me to advise you, the secret of all your problems lies not in your servants, but within yourself. Look within with a humble and sincere desire to discover and eradicate. Sooner or later, you will find the source of all your unhappiness. It may be a selfish desire, a suspicion, a grudge, an unfriendly mental attitude that sends its poison to those around you, and it affects yourself. Although you do not show it in your manner of acting or speaking, think kindly of your servants. Consider them as that extremity of service you would not procure for yourself if you were in their place. Rare and beautiful is that humility of soul by which a servant completely forgets himself in the good of his master. But even rarer and more beautiful, with divine beauty, is that nobility of soul by which a man, forgetting his own happiness, seeks the happiness of those under his authority and who depend on him for their livelihood. The happiness of such a man multiplies tenfold. A well-known and extensive employer has said that he never needs to fire an employee. I have always had the happiest relationships with my workers. So if one asks me how this is explained, I can only say that my goal from the beginning has been to do to them what I would like them to do to me. Herein lies the secret by which all desirable conditions are assured and all problems are overcome. You say you feel lonely and unloved, and that you have no friend in the world. Then I implore you, for your own happiness, blame no one but yourself. Be kind to others, and friends will soon surround you. Purify yourself and be kind, and you will be loved by all. Whatever conditions make your life burdensome, you can overcome them by developing and utilizing within you the transformative power of self-purification and self-conquest. Whether it is poverty that disturbs you, remember that the poverty I have spoken of is that which is the source of misery, and not that voluntary poverty which is the glory of emancipated souls. The riches that overwhelm, or the many misfortunes, pains and troubles that form the dark background of the tapestry of life, know that you can overcome them by conquering the inner selfish elements that give them life. It does not matter that, according to the infallible law, there are past thoughts and deeds to resolve and atone for by the same law, we set in motion new thoughts and deeds at every moment of our lives, where we have the power to make them good or bad. One should not conclude that if a man reaps what he has sown, he must lose money, lose his position, and also his strength or integrity. For that is where his true wealth, power, and happiness lie. It is he who clings to his ego, who is his own enemy and is surrounded by other enemies. He who renounces himself is his own savior and is surrounded by friends, like a protective shield facing the divine brilliance of a pure heart. All darkness evaporates, and all clouds dissolve, and he who has conquered the ego has conquered the universe. Therefore, come out of your poverty, come out of your pain, come out of your problems, your sighs, your complaints, your sorrows, and your loneliness. Come out of yourself. Shed the old, worn-out garment of your petty selfishness and don the new robe of universal love. Then you will reach the inner heaven, and this will be reflected in your entire outer life. He who firmly places his foot on the path of self-conquest, advancing with the staff of faith on the road of self-sacrifice, will surely attain the highest prosperity and reap abundant and lasting joy and happiness. To those who seek the supreme good, all things serve the wisest. Nothing comes as evil, and wisdom lends itself to all forms of evil. Dark sorrow veils a star waiting to shine with glorious light. Hell awaits heaven, and after night comes golden glory. From a distance, defeats are the steps by which we ascend toward a purer goal, toward nobler ends. Loss leads to gain, and joy accompanies the true steps taken on the hills of time. Pain leads to paths of holy bliss, to divine thoughts, words, and deeds, and the darkening clouds and the lightning that shine along the upward road of life meet. Misfortune only darkens the path whose end and summit is the brilliant, sunny, and lofty heaven of success that awaits our quest and abode, the heavy mantle of doubts and fears that darkens the valley of our hopes, the shadows that the spirit faces, the bitter harvest of tears, tasteless flavors, miseries and sorrows, bruises that arise from broken bonds. All these represent the stages by which we rise toward living spirits of solid beliefs. Compassionate and vigilant love rushes to meet the pilgrim from the land of destiny. All glory and all good await the arrival of obedient feet. The silent power of thought controls and directs its own forces. The most powerful forces in the universe are the silent forces, and according to the intensity of their power, a force becomes beneficial when well directed and destructive when misapplied. This is common knowledge regarding mechanical forces, such as steam, electricity, among others. But few have yet learned to apply this knowledge to the realm of the spirit, where the forces of thought, the most powerful of all, are continually generated and propagated like currents of salvation or destruction. At this stage of its evolution, man has come into possession of these forces, and the entire trend of his current advancement is complete enslavement. All possible wisdom for man in this material world lies solely in complete self-control. The command, "Love your enemies," resolves itself into an exhortation to enter here into the possession of this sublime wisdom by appropriating, dominating, and transmuting these mental forces to which man is servilely subjected, and by which he is helplessly swept along like a straw in the current. On the currents of selfishness, the Hebrew prophets, with their perfect knowledge of the supreme law, always linked external events to inner thought and associated national disaster or success with the thoughts and desires that dominated the nation at that time. The knowledge of the causal power of thought is the basis of all their prophecies, just as it is the basis of all real wisdom and power. National events are merely the functioning of the psychic forces of the nation. Wars, plagues, and famines are the meeting and clash of misdirected thought forces. The peaks at which destruction intervenes as an agent of the law is an absurdity to attribute war to the influence of one man or a group of men. It is the supreme horror of national selfishness and the silent, conquering force of thought that causes all things to manifest. The universe emerged from thought. Matter, in its final analysis, is simply an objectified thought. All relationships between men were first forged in thought and then objectified. The author, the inventor, the architect first constructs his work in thought, and having perfected each part as a complete and harmonious whole in the plan of thought, he then begins to materialize it, bringing it down into the material realm of the senses. When the forces of thought are directed in harmony with the dominant law, they are edifying and conservative. But when they become subversive, they become disintegrative and self-destructive. Adjust all your thoughts to a perfect and unwavering faith in the omnipotence and supremacy of good. This is to cooperate with that good and realize within yourself the solution and destruction of all evil. Create and live here, we have the true sense of salvation, the salvation from darkness and the negation of evil. By entering and realizing the living light of eternal good, where there is fear, worry, anxiety, doubt, problems, disgust, or disappointment, there is ignorance and lack of faith. All these mental conditions are the direct result of selfishness and rest on an inherent belief in the power and supremacy of evil. Therefore, they constitute practical atheism. Living in these negative and destructive mental conditions of the soul while submitting to them is the only true atheism. It is the salvation from such conditions that the human race needs. Moreover, no man should boast of his salvation as long as he remains a powerless and obedient slave. To be afraid, to worry, is sin just as much as cursing. How can one be afraid or worry if he intrinsically believes in eternal justice, in omnipotent good, in boundless love? To be afraid, to worry, to doubt, is to deny. Such mental states breed all weakness and failure, for they represent the cancellation and disintegration of the positive mental forces that would otherwise rush toward their object with power and produce their own beneficial results. Overcoming these negative conditions is entering a life of power. It is ceasing to be a slave and becoming a master, and there is only one way by which they can be overcome: constant and persistent growth in inner knowledge. Mentally denying evil is not enough. It must, through daily practice, be overcome and understood. Affirming good mentally is inappropriate. It is necessary, through unwavering effort, to enter into it and understand it. The intelligent practice of self-control quickly leads to the knowledge of the inner forces of thought, and later to the acquisition of that power by which they are correctly employed and directed. In proportion as you master yourself, as you control your mental forces instead of being controlled by them, in that same proportion will you dominate external affairs and circumstances. Show me a name under which everything collapses and cannot hold success, even when it reaches out its hands. Then I will show you a man who continually dwells in the mental conditions of even denying power, always wallowing in the swamps of doubt, being constantly swept away by the quicksands of fear, or being incessantly driven by the winds of anxiety, is to be a slave and live the life of a slave, even though success and influence are always knocking at your door seeking admission. Such a man, without faith and without self-discipline, is incapable of managing his affairs well and is a slave to circumstances. In reality, he is a slave to himself. Affliction teaches them, and they ultimately pass from weakness to strength through attention to bitter experience. For faith and purpose constitute the driving force of life. There is nothing that strong faith and unwavering purpose cannot accomplish, but it is only through the daily exercise of silent faith that the forces of thought gather, and also through the daily strengthening of silent purpose that these forces are directed toward the object. Whatever your position in life, before you can hope to enter any measure of success, usefulness, and power, you must learn to focus your thought forces. Cultivating calm and rest may be your business name, and suddenly you face an overwhelming difficulty or even a probable disaster, which makes you fearful, anxious, and unsure of what to do. Persisting in such a state of mind would be fatal, for when anxiety intervenes, good judgment disappears. Now, if you take advantage of 1 or 2 quiet hours, early in the morning or in the evening, and go to a secluded place or a room in your house where you know you will be absolutely free from intrusions, and after sitting in a comfortable posture, you direct your thought force away from the object of anxiety by thinking of something pleasant and joyful in your life. A calm and restful force will gradually take hold of your mind, causing your anxiety to fade away. The moment you notice that your mind returns to the lower plane of worry, bring it back and restore it to the plane of peace and strength. When this is fully realized, you will be able to concentrate all your mind on solving your difficulty, and what was complex and insurmountable for you in your hour of anxiety will become clear and easy. Then you will see, with that clear vision and perfect judgment that belong only to a calm and untroubled mind, the correct course to take and the adequate outcome to achieve. You may have to try day after day before you can perfectly calm your mind, but if you persevere, you will undoubtedly succeed, and the course presented to you in that hour of calm must be followed without hesitation. When you find yourself involved again in the affairs of the day and concerns reappear and begin to dominate you, you will start to think that the path is wrong or foolish. Do not pay attention to such suggestions. Guide yourself absolutely and entirely by the vision of tranquility and not by the shadows of anxiety. The hour of tranquility is the hour of illumination and good judgment. Through such a course of mental discipline, the scattered mental forces gather and direct themselves like rays of light converging on the problem at hand, resulting in it yielding before them. There is no difficulty, however great, that does not yield to a calm and powerful concentration of thought, and no legitimate object that cannot be quickly updated by the intelligent course and direction of the soul's forces. Until they have deeply explored and examined their inner nature and conquered the many enemies lurking within, they can have only a rough conception of the subtle power of thought, its inseparable relation to external and material things, or its magical power when properly channeled and directed to readjust and transform the conditions of life. Every thought you have is a force sent out according to its nature and intensity. It will seek a lodging in minds that correspond to it and will act upon you for good or for ill. There is incessant reciprocity between minds and a continuous exchange of thought forces. Selfish and disruptive thoughts are evil and destructive forces, messengers of evil sent to stimulate and increase evil in other minds, which in turn send them back to you with added power, while thoughts that are calm, pure, and unselfish are so many evangelical messengers sent into the world with health, healing, and blessings. Their wings counteract the forces of evil, pouring the oil of joy upon the troubled waters of anxiety and pain, restoring to broken hearts their inheritance of immortality. Think of these good things, and they will quickly manifest in your outer life as good conditions. Control your emotional forces, and you will be able to shape your outer life as you wish. The difference between a savior and a sinner is this: one has perfect control over the forces within him, while the other is dominated and controlled by them. There is absolutely no other path to true power and lasting peace than through self-control, self-discipline, and self-purification. To be at the mercy of whims is to be powerless, unhappy, and of real limited usefulness in the world. The conquest of petty likes and dislikes, whimsical loves and hates, fits of anger, suspicions, jealousies, and all the changing moods to which you are more or less defenseless, is the task that awaits you if you wish to weave into the net of life the golden threads of happiness and prosperity. Insofar as you are enslaved by the changing moods within you, you'll need to depend on others and external aids. As you walk through life, if you want to move forward steadily and securely toward any achievement, you must learn to rise above and control all these disturbing and slowing vibrations. You must daily practice the habit of putting your mind at rest, entering into silence, as it is commonly called. This is a method for replacing a troubling thought with a thought of peace, a thought of weakness with a thought of strength, until that is realized. One cannot expect to direct mental forces toward the problems and activities of life with any appreciable measure of success. It is a process of channeling the scattered forces into a powerful stream, just as a useless swamp can be transformed into a golden cornfield, or a fertile garden by draining and directing the harmful and dispersed currents into a well-defined channel. Thus, he who acquires calm and submits and directs the currents of thought within him saves his soul and causes his heart and life to prosper. As you begin to dominate your impulses and thoughts, you will start to feel within you a new silent power and a deep sense of calm and strength that will remain with you. Your latent powers will start to unfold, and whereas your efforts were previously weak and ineffective, you will be able to work with that quiet confidence that commands success. With this new power and strength, an inner illumination known as intuition will awaken within you. Thus you will no longer walk in darkness and speculation, but in light and certainty. With the development of this soul vision, judgment and mental insight will increase immeasurably, and this prophetic vision will develop within you, allowing you to perceive upcoming events and predict the outcome of your efforts with remarkable accuracy. Furthermore, as you change from within, your perspective on life will change, and as you change your mental attitude towards others, they will change their attitude and behavior towards you. As you rise above the lower, weakening and destructive mental forces, you will connect with the positive, strengthening and uplifting currents generated by strong, pure and noble minds. Your happiness will intensify immeasurably, and you will begin to realize the joy, strength and power that only come from self-discipline. This joy, strength and power will continuously radiate from you without any effort on your part. Moreover, even if you are completely unaware of it, strong people will be drawn to you, influence will be in your hands, and depending on your disturbed mental world, external events will form themselves. The enemies of a man are those of his own house. He who wishes to be useful, strong and happy must cease to be a passive receptacle for negative, deceptive and impure currents of thought. Just as a wise head of a household orders his servants and invites his guests, he must learn to order his desires and authoritatively declare which thoughts he will allow to enter the house of his soul. Even a very partial success in self-discipline greatly increases a person's power, and he who manages to perfect this divine accomplishment comes into possession of unimaginable wisdom, along with inner strength and peace. He also realizes that all the forces of the universe assist and protect the steps of those who, masters of their souls, would scale the highest heaven, traverse the lowest hell, and live in their dreams of constant beauty or in the lowest thoughts. For your thoughts are the heaven above you and your thoughts are the hell below. Happiness exists only in thought, and torment can only be known through thought. Worlds would fade away if there were no thought. Glory resides only in dreams, and the drama of the ages of eternal thought flows. Dignity, shame, sorrow, pain and anguish, love and hate are merely the masks of powerful thought that governs destiny. Just as the colors of the rainbow form the only golden ray, so universal changes constitute the only eternal dream, and this dream is within you. The dreamer has long waited for the morning to awaken him to the living and strong thought that realizes the ideal and dispels the dreams of hell into the highest and holiest heaven, where the pure and the perfect dwell. Evil is the thought that thinks it, good is the thought that does it. Thus, light and darkness, sin and purity grow with thought. Think of the greatest and you will see them. Fix your mind on the highest and you will become the highest. The secret of health, success and power. We all remember with intense pleasure when we were children how we listened to the inexhaustible fairy tales. With what enthusiasm we followed the fluctuations of the child's fortune, always protected at the moment of crisis from the malevolent machinations of the wicked witch, the cruel giant, or the evil king. And our little hearts never doubted the hero's or heroine's luck, nor their final triumph over all their enemies, for we knew that the fairies were infallible and would never abandon those who devoted their lives to good and truth. What incredible joy beat within us when the Queen Fairy, making use of all her magic at the critical moment, dispersed all the darkness and troubles, granting them the complete satisfaction of all their hopes, and they lived happily ever after. With the accumulation of years and an increasing intimacy with the so-called realities of life, our beautiful world of fairy tales faded away, and its wonderful inhabitants were relegated to the archives of memory, into the dark and the unreal. We believed ourselves wise and strong in leaving behind the land of childhood dreams, but by becoming little children again in the marvelous world of wisdom, we will return once more to the inspiring dreams of childhood and discover that after all they are realities. The little fairies, almost always invisible, yet endowed with magical and conquering power, grant to goodness, health, wealth, and happiness, along with all the gifts of nature in abundance. They are reborn into reality and immortalized in the soul realm of one who, through growth in wisdom, has entered into the knowledge of the power of thought and the laws that govern the inner world of being. For him, the fairies come to life as people, messengers of thought, powers of thought that work in harmony with the supreme good. Those who strive day by day to harmonize their hearts with the heart of the supreme good actually acquire true health, wealth, and happiness. There is no protection that can compare to goodness, and by goodness, I do not refer to mere outward conformity to moral rules, but to pure thought, noble aspiration, disinterested love, and the absence of vanity. Continuously dwelling in good thoughts projects around oneself a psychic atmosphere of sweetness and power that leaves its mark on all who come into contact with it. Just as a dawning light chases away the powerless shadows, so all the powerless forces of evil are put to flight by the scrutinizing rays of positive thought that shine from a heart fortified in purity and faith. Where there is firm faith and uncompromising purity, there is health, success, and power. Such a heart cannot harbor illness, failure, and disaster, for there is nothing for them to feed on. Even physical conditions are largely determined by mental states, and the scientific world is rapidly approaching this truth. The old materialistic belief that man is what his body does is rapidly fading away and is being replaced by the inspiring belief that man is superior to his body. Men around the world are ceasing to believe that a man is desperate because he is dyspeptic, and are beginning to understand that he is dyspeptic because he is desperate. In the near future, it will become common knowledge that every disease has its origin in the mind, that it has its root and origin in the mind, and that sin, disease, pain, and affliction do not actually belong to the universal order. They are not inherent to the nature of things, but are the direct result of our ignorance of the correct relationships of things. According to tradition, there was once in India a school of philosophers who lived with such absolute purity and simplicity that they often reached the age of 50. In their time, falling ill was considered an unforgivable curse, as it was seen as a violation of the law. The sooner we realize and acknowledge that illness, far from being the arbitrary visit of an offended God or the trial of an irrational providence, is the result of our own error or sin, the sooner we will embark on the path to health. Illness comes to those who attract it, to those whose minds and bodies are receptive to it, and it departs from those whose sphere of strong, pure, and positive thought generates healing and revitalizing currents. If you are prone to anger, worry, jealousy, greed, or any other disharmonious mental state and hope for perfect physical health, you are waiting for the impossible, as you continually sow the seeds of illness in your mind. The wise man carefully avoids such mental conditions, knowing they are far more dangerous than a bad sewer or an infected house. If you want to rid yourself of all physical pain and enjoy perfect physical harmony, put your mind in order and harmonize your thoughts. Think of joy. Think of love. Let the elixir of goodwill flow through your veins, and you will need no other medicine. Set aside your jealousy, suspicions, worries, hatred, and selfish indulgences, and you will set aside your dyspepsia, bile, nerves, and joint pain. If you persist in clinging to these weakening and demoralizing mental habits, do not complain when your body is affected by illness. The following story illustrates the close relationship between mental habits and bodily conditions. A certain man suffered from a painful illness and consulted doctor after doctor, but to no avail. He then visited cities famous for their healing waters, but after bathing in all of them, his illness was more painful than ever. One night, he dreamed that a presence approached him and said, "Brother, have you tried all the means of healing?" He replied, "Yes, I have tried them all." But the presence countered, "I do not believe you. Come with me, and I will show you a healing bath that you have neglected." The afflicted man followed her, and the presence led him to a pond of clear water. There she said, "Dive into this water and you will surely recover." Then she vanished. The man plunged into the water, and upon emerging, to his surprise, his illness had left him. At that moment he saw the word renunciation written on the pond. Upon waking, the meaning of his dream crossed his mind, and looking within himself, he discovered that he had been all along the victim of a sinful indulgence, so much so that he vowed he would renounce it forever. He kept his promise, and from that day on, his affliction began to abandon him, and in a short time he was completely restored. Many people complain of being altered by overwork. In most cases, the breakdowns are rather the result of a senseless waste of energy. If you want to guarantee health, you must learn to work without friction. Becoming angry, worrying, or fretting over trivial details invites collapse. Work, whether mental or physical, is beneficial and healthy, and the man who can work with firm and calm persistence, free of all anxiety and worry, with a mind entirely focused on the task at hand, will not only accomplish much more than the man who is always hurried and anxious, but he will also maintain his health, a blessing that the other quickly loses. True health and true success go hand in hand, as they are inextricably linked in the realm of thought. Just as mental harmony produces bodily health, it also leads to a harmonious sequence in the realization of projects. Order your thoughts, and you will order your life. Pour the oil of tranquility on the tumultuous waters of passions and prejudices, and on the storms of misfortune. No matter the threat, they will be powerless to capsize the boat of your soul as long as it sails in the ocean of life. And if it is steered by a joyful and unwavering faith, its course will be doubly secure, and many dangers will pass without attacking it. Through the power of faith, all lasting work is accomplished. Faith in the Supreme, faith in the dominant law, faith in your work and in your power to realize that work is the rock on which you must build if you want to succeed in standing firm and not falling. In all circumstances, follow the highest impulses within you. Remain always true to the divine being, trust in the inner light, in the inner voice, and pursue your goal with a fearless and serene heart, believing that the future will reward you for every thought and effort. Knowing that the laws of the universe can never fail, and that your own will return to you with mathematical precision, this is faith, and living by faith is the power of such faith. The dark waters of uncertainty part. Every mountain of difficulty crumbles, and the believing soul passes and rises. Strive, reader, to acquire above all the invaluable possession of this fearless faith, for it is the talisman of happiness, success, peace, power, and all that makes life great and superior to suffering. Build on such faith, build on the rock of the eternal, and with the materials of the eternal, and thus the structure you erect will never dissolve. It will rise above all accumulations of luxuries and material wealth, whose end is dust. Whether you are cast into the depths of sorrow or raised to the heights of joy, always maintain your control over this faith. Always return to it as to your rock of refuge, and keep your feet firmly anchored on its immortal and unshakable base. Centered on such faith, you will possess a spiritual strength that will break, like so many crystal toys, all the forces of evil that will rush against you, and you will achieve success, such as the simple wrestler seeking worldly gains will never know or dream of. If you have faith and do not doubt, not only will you succeed, but if you say to a mountain, "Move and throw yourself into the sea," it will do so. There are today men and women, tabernacles of flesh and bone, who have realized this faith, live in it and by it day after day, and who, having subjected it to the greatest test, have entered into possession of its glory and peace. These people have sent forth the command that the mountains of sorrow and disappointment, of mental fatigue and physical pain, have passed and have been cast into the sea of forgetfulness. If you become the possessor of this faith, you will not need to worry about your success or failure. Success will come. You will not need to be anxious about the results, but you will work with joy and tranquility, knowing that correct thoughts and efforts will inevitably bring correct results. I know a lady who has had many happy satisfactions, and recently a friend said to her, "Oh, how lucky you are. You just have to wish for something, and it comes to you." And indeed, it seemed to be the case on the surface, but in reality, all the blessings that have entered this woman's life are the direct result of the state of inner blessing that she has cultivated and trained toward perfection throughout her life. Mere desire brings only disappointment. Life belongs to those who count. Fools desire and complain, while the wise work and wait. This woman had worked, working from the outside and the inside, but most importantly, from within her heart and soul. With the invisible hands of the Spirit she had built, with the precious stones of faith, hope, joy, devotion, and love, a magnificent temple of light whose glory surrounded her at all times. It was reflected in her eyes, which sparkled on her face. It also vibrated in her voice, and all who approached her presence felt her captivating charm. And just as in her case, in yours too, your success, your failure, your influence, your entire life, you carry with you, for your dominant thought tendencies are the determining factors of your existence. Send out thoughts of unwavering and happy love, and blessings will fall into your hands. Thus, your table will be spread with the linen of peace. Send out hateful, impure, and unhappy thoughts, and curses will rain down upon you, causing fear and worry to wait on your pillow. You are the unconditional creator of your destiny, whatever it may be. At every moment you send out influences that will make or mar your life. Let your heart grow, be loving and unselfish, and your influence and success will be great and lasting. Even if you earn little money, if you confine it to the narrow confines of self-interest, even if you become a millionaire, your influence and success will ultimately be utterly insignificant. Cultivate that pure and unselfish spirit, and combine it with purity and faith, unity of purpose, and you will evolve from within. The elements, not only abundant health and lasting success, but also greatness and power, will be yours. If your current position displeases you and your heart is not in your work, carry out your duties with scrupulous care. Thus, while resting your mind on the idea that the best position and the greatest opportunities await you, you will always maintain an active mental outlook for emerging possibilities, so that when the critical moment arrives and a new channel presents itself, you will enter it with your mind fully prepared for the undertaking, and with that intelligence and foresight that arises from mental discipline. Whatever your task, focus your entire mind on it with all the energy you can muster. The impeccable accomplishment of small tasks inevitably leads to the greater ones. Strive to elevate yourself through constant ascent, and you will never fall, for therein lies the secret of true power. Learn through constant practice to manage your resources and to concentrate them at any moment on a determined point. Fools waste all their mental and spiritual energy on trivialities, foolish talk, or selfish discussions, not to mention the physical excesses of the prodigal. If you want to acquire the power to overcome, you must cultivate calm and passivity. You must be able to remain alone. All power is associated with stillness. The mountain, the massive rock, the oak that has weathered a storm speaks to us of power through their solitary greatness, combined with their defying firmness. While quicksand, the bending branch, and the swaying reed speak to us of weakness, for they are mobile, non-resisting, and utterly useless when separated from their companions. It is the powerful man who, when all his companions are swept away by an emotion or a passion, remains calm and impassive. Only he who has succeeded in commanding and controlling himself is fit to command and control others. The hysterical, the fearful, the reflective, and the frivolous who seek company will fall through lack of support. But the calm, the intrepid, the reflective who seek the solitude of the forest, of exile and of the heights, will have more power added to their own, successfully curbing the psychic currents and turmoil that envelop humanity each time with greater success. Passion is not power, it is the abuse of power, the dispersion of power. Passion is like a raging storm that strikes fiercely and savagely at the besieged rocks, while power is like the rock itself, which remains silent and impassive through it all. It was a manifestation of true power when Martin Luther, tired of the persuasions of his fearful friends who doubted his safety, responded, "If there were as many demons in the world as there are Texas on the roofs, I would go." And when Benjamin Disraeli collapsed during his first parliamentary speech, drawing the mockery of the chamber upon himself, it was a demonstration of germinal power. When he exclaimed, "The day will come when they will consider it an honor to listen to me," when that young man I knew, going through continuous setbacks and misfortunes, was the target of his friends' mockery. Being told to stop striving, he responded, "The moment will soon come when they will marvel at my good fortune and success," proving that he was possessed by that silent and irresistible power that led him to overcome countless difficulties and crowned his life with success. If you do not have this power, you can acquire it through practice. For the beginning of power is also the beginning of wisdom. You must start by overcoming those aimless trivialities of which you have been until now a willing victim. The loud and uncontrolled laughter, slander and idle gossip, making jokes simply to provoke a burst of laughter. All these things must be set aside as a great waste of precious energy. St. Paul never demonstrated his incredible insight into the hidden laws of human progress with more profit than when he warned the Ephesians against foolish talk and inappropriate jokes, for indulging in them regularly destroys all power and spiritual life. As you become impervious to such mental dissipations, you will begin to understand what true power is, and then you will begin to struggle against the most powerful desires and appetites that keep your soul in bondage and prevent you from accessing power, making your further progress increasingly clear. But above all, have a single aim. Have a legitimate and useful purpose, and dedicate yourself to it wholeheartedly. Let nothing deter you. Remember that the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Be ambitious to learn, but slow to ask. Understand your work well and let it belong to you. And as you progress, always following the inner guidance, the infallible voice will lead you from victory to victory, and you will rise step by step to higher places of rest, and your increasingly broader perspective will gradually reveal to you the beauty and essential purpose of life. Purified by oneself, health will be yours, protected by faith, success will be yours, self-directed, power will be yours, and all that you do will prosper. For no longer ceasing to be a disjointed and self-enslaved unit, you will be in harmony with the great law, working no longer against, but with universal life. The eternal good and health that you gain will remain with you. The success you achieve will be beyond all human calculation. It will never pass away, and the influence and power you would wield will continue to increase through the ages, for they will be a part of that immutable principle that upholds. Here is the secret of health, a pure heart and a well-ordered mind. Here is the secret of success, an unwavering faith and a wisely directed purpose. And restraining with an unwavering will the dark steed of desire is the secret of power. All paths await my feet to tread them, light and darkness, the living and the dead, the broad path and the narrow way, the high and the low, the good and the bad, and in a swift or slow step. Now, I can enter any path I wish and discover by walking which is good or bad, and all the good things that my wandering feet await. If only I come with the vow not to violate the narrow, elevated, and holy path of purity born of the heart, I stand there walking safely, scoffing and despising on my way to the flowering meadows. Through the thorny path, I can be where health, success, and power await me at my arrival. Yes, every fleeting hour, I cling to love and patience. I remain with steadfastness and never stray from high integrity. Thus, I will finally see the land of immortality, and I can seek and find, I can accomplish, I cannot claim, but in losing I can recover. The law inclines toward me, but I must incline myself toward the law if I wish to reach the end of my afflictions. If I want to restore my soul to light and life and weep no more, the arrogant and selfish right to claim all good things does not belong to me. It is not the humble aim of seeking and finding, knowing and understanding to wisely direct all steps. Nothing belongs to me to claim or command, but everything belongs to me to know and understand. The secret of abundant happiness is great. It is the thirst for happiness, and equally great is the lack of happiness. Most poor people aspire to wealth, believing that their possession will bring them the supreme and true happiness. Many rich people, after satisfying all their desires and whims, suffer from boredom and satiety, and are further from the possession of happiness than those who are very poor. If we reflect on this state of affairs, we will come to know the importance of the truth that happiness does not come from external possessions, nor does misery stem from the lack of them. For if this were the case, we would find the poor always miserable, and the rich always happy. But often it is the opposite. Some of the most miserable people I have known were those surrounded by wealth and luxuries, while some of the brightest and happiest people I have known possessed only the basic necessities of life. Many men who have accumulated wealth have confessed that the selfish gratification that followed the acquisition of wealth robbed them of the sweetness of their lives, and that they have never been as happy as when they were poor. What then is happiness, and how can it be obtained? It is an invention, a lie, and only suffering is enduring. After observing and reflecting seriously, we will discover that all, except those who have taken the path of wisdom, believe that happiness is obtained only by the satisfaction of desire. It is this belief, rooted in the soil of ignorance, continually reinforced by selfish whims, that is the cause of all the misery in the world. And I do not limit the word desire to the grossest animal appetites, for it extends to the higher psychic realm where much more powerful, subtle, and insidious appetites enslave the intellectual and the refined, depriving them of all that beauty, harmony, and purity of soul whose expression is most often admitted. Most people admit that selfishness is the cause of all unhappiness in the world, but they fall into the destructive illusion of the soul of referring to the selfishness of others and not to their own. When you are ready to admit that all your unhappiness is the result of your own selfishness, you will not be far from the gates of paradise. But as long as you are convinced that it is the selfishness of others that steals your joy, you will remain imprisoned in the purgatory that you have created for yourself. Happiness is that inner state of perfect satisfaction which is joy and peace, and of which all desire is eliminated. The satisfaction that results from a gratified desire is brief and illusory, and is always followed by a greater demand for gratification. Desire is as insatiable as the ocean, and cries out louder as its demands are met, requiring ever greater service from its deluded devotees, until ultimately they are struck by physical or mental anguish and are thrown into the purifying fires of feeling. Desire is the religion of hell, and all torments converge there. The abandonment of desire is the realization of heaven, and all delights await the pilgrim there. I have sent my soul through the invisible, a letter of this life after death to spell out. For a moment, my soul returned to me and whispered, I am heaven and hell. Heaven and hell are internal states. If you immerse yourself in the self and in all your gratifications, you immerse yourself in hell. If you rise above the self, to that state of consciousness which is the absolute negation and oblivion of the self, you enter heaven. The self is blind, without judgment. It does not possess true knowledge and always leads to correct perception. Impartial judgment and true knowledge belong only to the divine state, and this is to the extent that you realize the divine consciousness. Thus, you will know what true happiness is. As long as you persist in the selfish pursuit of your own personal happiness, it will be said to you, happiness, and you will sow the seeds of unhappiness. To the extent that you manage to lose yourself in serving others, to that extent happiness will come to you, and you will reap a harvest of happiness. It is in loving, and not in being loved, that the heart is blessed. It is in giving, and not in seeking gifts, that we find our quest. Whatever your aspirations or needs, if you give, thus your soul will be nourished and you will truly live. If you cling to the self, you cling to sadness. If you renounce the self, you enter peace. Selfish seeking is not only losing happiness, but even what we believe to be the source of happiness. Look how the glutton continually seeks a new treat to stimulate his numb appetite, and how, swollen, overwhelmed, and sick, he eats barely. Finally, in jest, he has mastered his appetite, and seeks not only but never thinks of gustatory pleasure. He finds pleasure in the most frugal food. The angelic form of happiness that men, looking through the eyes of the self, imagine seeing in gratified desire when they embrace it, always turns out to be the skeleton of misery. Truly, he who seeks his life will lose it, and he who loses his life will find it. And lasting happiness will come to you when, ceasing to cling selfishly, you are ready to let go. When you are prepared to lose unreservedly that inner thing to which you are attached, one day it will be taken from you. Then you will discover that what seemed a painful loss turns out to be a supreme gain. To abandon in order to gain is not a greater deception, nor a more prolific source of misery. But being willing to yield and to suffer losses is indeed the way. How is it possible to find true happiness? By focusing on those things which, by their very nature, must pass. Real and lasting happiness can only be found by centering on what is permanent. So rise above attachment and desire for impermanent things, and then you will enter into a consciousness of the eternal. And as you rise above self, growing ever more in the spirit of purity, self-sacrifice, and universal love, you will focus on that consciousness and realize that happiness which has no reaction and can never be taken from the heart that has reached total self-forgetfulness in its love for others. Not only has it attained the highest joy, but it has entered into immortality, for it has realized the divine. If you look back over your life, you will discover that the moments of greatest happiness were those when you spoke a few words or performed a few acts of compassion or selfless love, for spiritually, happiness and harmony are synonyms. Harmony is a phase of the great law, whose spiritual expression is love. All selfishness is discord, and to be selfish is not to be in harmony with the divine order. By realizing this omnipresent love that is the negation of self, we align ourselves with the divine music, the universal song, and this ineffable melody that is true happiness becomes ours. Men and women rush back and forth in blind search of happiness and cannot find it, nor will they ever find it, until they recognize that happiness is already within them and around them, filling the universe, and that in their selfish pursuit they are following happiness. To make it mine, passing through the great oak and the vine of ivy, I pursued it through hills and valleys, across fields and meadows in the purple valley. Swiftly chasing the stream, I climbed the dizzying cliffs where eagles scream. I quickly crossed every land and sea. But always, happiness eluded me. Exhausted, I could go no further, but I sank down to rest on a barren shore. A man came asking for food and another begging. I placed the bread and gold in their bony palms. One came asking for compassion and the other for rest. I shared with every needy one the best of myself, when suddenly sweet joy, in a divine form, stood by my side, softly whispering, "I am yours." These beautiful lines from Burleigh express the secret of all abundant happiness. Sacrifice the personal and the transient, and you will immediately rise toward the impersonal. Abandon that narrow, corseted ego which seeks to have all things submit to its own petty interests, and you will enter into the company of angels, into the very heart and essence of universal love. Forget completely the sorrows of others, and care for others. Thus divine happiness will come to you and end all pain and suffering, taking the first step with a good thought, the second with a good word, and the third with a good action. I have entered into paradise, and you can enter into paradise by following the same path. This happiness is not in the beyond, it is here, and only the selfless realize it. Only the pure in heart know it in its fullness. If you have not realized this limitless happiness, you cannot begin to make it concrete by always holding before you the high ideal of selfless love and aspiring toward it. Aspiration or prayer is the upward-turned desire. It is the soul turning toward its divine source, where only can be found the lasting satisfaction. Through aspiration, the destructive forces of desire are transformed into divine and omnipresent energy. To aspire is to strive to be free of the shackles of desire. It is the prodigal become wise through solitude and suffering, returning to his Father's home. As you rise above the sordid self, as you break the chains that bind you, you will realize the joy of giving, as opposed to the misery of clinging. Give your substance, give your intellect, give the love and light that grows within you. Then you will understand that it is indeed more blessed to give than to receive, but the gift must come from the heart, without any stain of ego, without desire for reward. The gift of pure love is always accompanied by happiness. If after giving you feel hurt because you are not thanked, not flattered, or because your name is not in the newspaper, you must know then that your gift was motivated by vanity and not by love, and that you were not truly giving but taking. Lose yourself in the well-being of others, forget yourself, and in all that you do, such is the secret of abundant happiness. Always be careful to avoid selfishness and faithfully learn the divine lessons of inner sacrifice. Thus, you will rise to the highest summits of happiness and remain in the sun never dimmed of universal joy, clad in the shining garment of immortality. Seek the happiness that does not fade. Seek the joy that lives and leaves no painful day. You are breathless for the currents of love, life, and peace. Let all dark desires fade away and let selfish pursuit cease. You find yourself on paths of pain, tormented by sorrow, struck by suffering. You walk on ways that hurt your weary feet even more. You sigh for the resting place where tears and pains cease. Sacrifice your selfish heart and find the heart of peace. The realization of prosperity is only given to the heart that abounds in integrity, trust, generosity, and love. The realization of true love that does not possess these qualities cannot know prosperity, for prosperity, like happiness, is not an external possession but a realization. The greedy man may become a millionaire, but he will always be miserable, petty, and poor, and he will even consider himself externally poor as long as there is one man in the world who is richer than he. While the just man, the one with an open hand and the loving one, will realize a full and rich prosperity, even if their external possessions are small. He who is dissatisfied is poor. He who is content with what he has is rich, and he who is generous with what he has is richer. When we contemplate the fact that the universe abounds in all good things, both material and spiritual, and compare it to man's blind desire to obtain a few pieces of gold or a few acres of land, that is when we realize how dark and ignorant selfishness is. It is then that we know that self-seeking is self-destruction. Nature gives everything unreservedly and loses nothing. Man, by clinging to everything, loses everything. If you want to realize true prosperity, do not give in as many have done in the belief that if you do what is right, everything will go wrong. Do not let the word competition shake your faith in the supremacy of justice. I care not what men say about the laws of competition, for do I not know the immutable law that will one day drive them away, and that is already driving them away, even now, in the heart and life of the just man? And knowing this law, I cannot contemplate all the dishonesty with untroubled repose, for I know where certain destruction awaits them. In all circumstances, do what you believe is right, and trust in the law. Trust in the divine power that is immanent in the universe and will never abandon you. Thus, you will always be protected by trust. All your losses will turn into gains, and all the curses that threaten will be transformed into blessings. Never set aside integrity, generosity, and love, for these, united with energy, will elevate you to the state of true prosperity. Do not believe the world when it tells you that you must always think of number one first and others afterward. To do this is to not think of others at all, but only of one's own convenience. Those who practice this will know only the day when they are abandoned by all, and when in their solitude and anguish they cry out, there will be no one to listen to them or help them. To consider oneself before all others is to shorten and hinder every noble and divine impulse. Let your soul expand. Let your heart reach out to others with warmth, love, and generosity, for in this way great and lasting will be your joy, and all prosperity will come to you. Those who have strayed from the path of righteousness are wary of competition. Those who always pursue the right need not concern themselves with defense. This is not an empty assertion. There are men today who, by the power of integrity and faith, have defied all competition, and who, without deviating in the least from their methods when put in competition, have consistently risen toward prosperity, while those who attempted to undermine them have fallen, defeated. To possess those inner qualities that constitute goodness is to be armored against all powers of evil, and to be doubly protected at all times from trial. To build oneself up in these qualities is to construct a success that cannot be shaken, and to enter into a prosperity that will endure forever. The white tunic of the invisible heart is stained with sin and sorrow, affliction and pain. All the ponds of repentance and the springs of prayer will not serve to wash it anew as long as, on the path of ignorance, the stains of error continue to cling. The contaminations mark the twisted path of self, where anguish lurks and disappointments sting. Knowledge and wisdom can only serve to purify and cleanse my attire, for there, in the waters of love, lies the unalterable, eternal, and serene peace. Sin and repentance are the way of pain. Knowledge and wisdom are the way of peace. By the near path of practice I will find where happiness begins, how pains and sorrows cease, the self will depart, and truth will take its place. The immutable, the indivisible will take its dwelling in me, and cleanse the white tunic of the invisible heart.